If you have any questions, we got a couple minutes. Eugene, Nebraska, Iowa, Indiana.
Okay, we're live on YouTube, sharing to Facebook.
Portugal, Southern California. Oh yeah, people from all over the place. Holland, sweet. I got a little Dutch in me. Yeah, if anybody's, we just got a couple minutes here. So if you want to ask me a question in the chat box or interact with me in any way, I'm just sitting here.
All right, we are pretty much good to go.
Okay.
We are
Right
happening.
on.
So welcome to Mycelial Mass, Deeper Relationships and Community Through Cultivation. I am Daniel Shankin. I'm the program director of the Psilocybin Summit. I am so glad you're here, that you guys have joined us on our first day to celebrate 920 and explore the myth, magic, science, and culture of the sacred mushroom. And I am here with my good friend, Seth Warner. Seth is a member of the San Francisco Psychedelic Society. He also founded the Mycelial Mass program, which is a community education event, community education series about mushroom cultivation. And thank you for being here with us, Seth.
Yeah, man. Thank you for this opportunity. It's been really cool getting to know you over the past couple of years and seeing how we're both growing in our own directions, helping to myceliate the Bay and make some new connections and bring the community together, bring it from the underground into the above ground, into the light as we fruit like beautiful mushrooms. Yeah, so hey everybody, my name is Seth. I'm gonna try to limit my movement. I noticed that it's shaking everything. I am here, I'm living in California in the Bay Area. I've been in California for the past about 4 years, and I've been involved in the Psychedelic Society for about 2 years, and in mushroom cultivation and developing community for the past 3.5 years. So today I want to walk you guys through a little bit, just basically about my personal experience in this path that I'm walking. And I want to talk about relationship and how mushroom cultivation can really bring deeper relationships into our experience, not only in our lives, generally speaking, but also into our journey space, as well as how that model on the micro can create a macro model for developing communities like Mycelial Mass around the country. Basically, it was, Daniel, you referred to Mycelial Mass as like the way you said it almost sounded like a series of educational events, like almost like a top-down class education. But it's something, in my opinion, way cooler than that. It's a group of people coming together as a meetup. There's no real expectations of what needs to happen there, what's going to happen there. It's very kind of spontaneous what people want to share week to week, but it's a pretty popular event of people educating one another in a really informal way, in a really like kind of friendship, socially oriented atmosphere. And I think it takes a lot of lessons from the personal kind of cultivation, developing a relationship space, and kind of magnifies them. And yeah, I think it's a cool model that I want to share with everybody, because I'd really like to take it to the visionary space where we can kind of see how we can help to create a healthier psychedelic culture across the country and maybe across the world with models like this, where it's really about helping one another and sharing gratitude and reciprocity and relationship. So yeah, I kind of just said a whole lot in a very short period of time. So basically for the rest of the talk, I'm going to be repeating what I just said, but with a lot more detail. Yeah, so just really quickly about myself. So I started with mushroom cultivation when I got a really interesting opportunity to help out at the lab at Counterculture Labs. Somebody was moving out of the lab manager space, and I met them, and 15 minutes later, they're like, "You should be the guy." an interesting opportunity. At that time, I was only teaching about gourmet and medicinal mushrooms. It was all I really knew about personally. I hadn't gone super deep with psilocybin, but I pretty quickly got wrapped up into hosting a series of workshops that were much more like a class, like a top-down class. And that was with some friends, Darren and Casey. And together we didn't really know much about what we were doing, but we were really happy to share it. And we were charging like $5 a person to come check out our workshops. And then we were getting 30, 40 people showing up, and it was like this really impressive moment where we were like, oh my God, like this is important. We're doing something. One workshop turned into two. I think we ended up doing about 8 workshops overall. And in that process, got a lot of feedback. I learned some interesting lessons about what people are looking for and what people want. And just to rewind a little bit, I got into this space after a few years of traveling around the States, going to different permaculture farms, intentional communities, and really seeking like where I could put myself for the greatest point of like impact. I felt, and I do feel, that there's a lot of like unhealthy kind of conditioning in our culture, and just trying to find ways to breed connection is a lot about what my path is about. So to jump back in to where I was just at with like the workshop vibes, I was just watching, learning, listening, and people are telling me that I mean, at the end of any workshop, I'd probably have a line of like 3, 4, 5 people saying like, hey, I want to grow psilocybin mushrooms. This is why. And I had a taboo still. And a lot of people are saying to me, okay, I want to grow them because I was in the war, I have PTSD, I want to get over that, or I had this abuse in my life. And, every interaction was just wearing down that taboo I had, to the point where I went from kind of scared to be that guy to like a sense of being, okay, I have a moral obligation to do this work, to like try and help educate people. So it was at that point that I started 2 different things. One was like a more of a meetup, kind of having people come together. It wasn't Mycelial Mass yet, but we were doing more just different experiments with mycelium. And then at the same time, I was also trying to learn as much as I could and experiment with cultivation on my own, so I could start to help the people, cultivation of psychedelic mushrooms, so that I could actually help people with that side. But it was very much like in the shadows and in the dark, and I was pretty fearful the whole time because, yeah, I mean, it's a felony in a lot of places. So at a certain point, I had to leave all that because I didn't really know what it was leading to. It felt like the thing that people really wanted. It wasn't clear how I could help them. So I found an opportunity actually to help out with the Psychedelic Society. And I didn't really see that this would happen, but I learned a lot about holding bigger spaces, helping to build more community around the whole impact. And then it led to Decriminalized Nature in Oakland, and we were able to help with that project, which was, I'm super grateful for that opportunity, just to be in that room and to do the little bit of work that I did to help get it moved along. But after that passed, we're all really impressed that it happened in the first place. But to go back to Mycelial Mass and to see the renewed vigor of like what people were, the energy that people were bringing out of the darkness, they were coming from a place where they had this hobby, this love that they were hiding from people, they were scared to talk about. And now all of a sudden they could come together and share that something that this breeds like really deep passion in people. And it breeds like a real sense of work, like doing important work, especially when you can share it with your community and other people, and that this medicine is really powerful. So I want to start talking a little bit now about the personal relationship, and I'm going to start off with a little bit of a metaphor, but it's also a truth about fungi. It's that it's truly an alchemist. We can take this being, start with a single spore, and it really is in the process of cultivation that we learn about psilocybin not as a molecule. We learn about mushrooms not as a substance, but we learn about it as a being and as a friend and something that we can have a relationship with. And it's in that process that we can really see the alchemy that it does, the superpower of the mushroom, where it can take, something as simple as brown rice and coconut coir, the outer husk of a coconut. And we can turn that, like together, right? Because the mushroom's not doing it by itself. We're helping, it's helping us, we're helping it. And we're creating some of the most profound medicine that's making waves all around the world with these incredibly simple ingredients. You know, when I was teaching those workshops, people weren't going home and growing oyster mushrooms and reishis like crazy. It wasn't happening like left and right. You know, a few people from a 40-person class might take that knowledge home and use it. But when people are learning about this really impactful medicine, I mean, the motivation is there and the accessibility is there. You can buy all these ingredients at the store. You can get the spores online. It's not very difficult. So as decriminalization happens, this knowledge is just so potent that this is just incredibly easy to do. You can do the whole process for probably under $100. It takes up the space of a shoebox in your closet. I mean, and at the same time, you have this incredible curiosity, this experiment happening where you get to tap in deeper to to see the being grow, to do its work, and to ultimately like reap your harvest. I think that this teaches us about a relationship that's so much deeper than going to maybe for people that don't have access, trying to find somebody that you don't know, potentially exposing yourself and your community, being concerned about the darkness that is out there, the taboo that is out there, and having a commodified relationship where the best that we can do is to buy these mushrooms from somebody that we might not know, or in other cases we might know them. It might be a beautiful situation. I don't mean to generalize too much, but compared to not having a story of a background, we actually get to start off our preparation for the psychedelic journey with giving life to the being that's going to bring wisdom back to us. So I think that this is a beautiful model for relationship and reciprocity. And I think that's almost I mean, I would like to see it almost treated as like an essential element in using mushrooms. It's so accessible. Really, I think anybody could do it. And the impact that it has by creating that model in the first place of, okay, we're in a relationship, it builds trust, it builds a sense of gift, and it opens us to receiving. Those are my main points about it. You know, the way that that impacts the journey for me is that I really feel a lot more comfortable with the being. I feel like I've had a lot of time, about 2 months from beginning to end, to think about the process, to review on what I'm moving forward, to what I want to accomplish, why I'm doing this. And I'm not doing it necessarily alone either. I actually do have this deeper sense that the mushroom itself, it is taking on the energy that I'm giving it, some of the love and appreciation. And I know that a lot of this can kind of sound woo-woo, and I'm okay with that in the sense that what we are really doing is crafting narratives, and that what we're doing is storytelling. And that when we're in the space of the psychedelic journey, you know, what's coming back to us is what we believe. It is the narratives, it is the stories that we've been telling. So I think that the story of beginning with a gift of life to the mushroom and then opening ourselves up to receive back what it might have in store for us with general intentions around self-growth and personal mastery and whatnot. I think that it's a powerful narrative that can really imbue our experience with something much deeper than, hey, I heard these shrooms are going to be good for me. I guess I'll eat them and see what happens. And I'm kind of just making that comparison. It might be a little extreme, but I just want to kind of depict why I believe that, you know, the cultivation for the personal experience is so important. So to take that understanding as like a baseline of why cultivation is important is important. Okay, sorry, let me say it again. Using that as a baseline of why cultivation is important. And then I want to apply that. Sorry, I'm gonna drink a little water. I just want to apply that understanding to a larger concept around community. Because when I walked back into Mycelial Mass after about a year of not being there, putting a lot of time into psychedelic society, decriminalized nature, what I saw was crazy impressive. I'm getting a note that my connection is unstable. How's it doing, Danielle? Can you see me? Cool. All right. What I saw was just really incredibly impressive. Carol, you're here. You're one of the reasons why it was so impressive to me. I walked in and there's a woman in her 60s and another person, a man in his 70s, at the center of this room of kind of chaotic conversation and enjoyment, teaching people how to grow mushrooms. just a year before, when I was being asked again and again about cultivating shrooms and all that, I was still feeling like, oh, this is in the darkness. But to walk into this room and to see these like really joyful older people finding like a sense of, opportunity to give, a lot of gratitude and reciprocity within that community, I was just really humbled to see what had come of something that I had started without that intention. And I think that this community and what is possible with mycelial mass is really a place to try out the lessons, or to take what we've learned from the practice of cultivation and to apply it to that larger context. And I really see that that's what's happening in a lot of ways. There's a lot of people who have kind of instilled in themselves a sense of like gratitude and relationship with the mushroom, and then want to share that with the community and other people that want to learn, other people that were in a space where they didn't know how to grow mushrooms, or they didn't know how to get mushrooms, and then to have a really profound experience ultimately that allowed them to have deeper insights. To bring that back into a community setting, really, to me, it feels like a full circle, kind of a full cycle. And I see it as like a self-perpetuating model that can hopefully be applied to places all around the country. And as decriminalization happens, I think that one of the most important things that we can do is make it really clear that the darkness that surrounds the concept of illegal drugs, illicit substances, potential jail time, and things like that is completely imposed upon us. It's not because these substances themselves are of the darkness, are necessarily something that should be scary, but those narratives and, sure, they deserve a lot of respect. I think that that's something that we can, develop in the process of cultivating mushrooms and understanding them, as well as, a number of other ways to get to know something. But, I think that the darkness is imposed, and that what we can hopefully do is to really destigmatize and create beautiful spaces of light and love and sharing and connection, to really have the cultivation of this medicine at the very center of it. And what's possible with, the timeline that mushrooms require, and what's possible with the needs of these communities, is that, the needs are so minimal and the return on investment is so soon, that we can really see this kind of generating a ripple effect pretty quickly. For example, like, this event is never advertised besides being on somebody else's meetup page. It happens every other week, and there's like 30 to 40 people there every single time. And it's just so inspiring to see, like, to ask myself, what if we tried to, like, quote unquote, like, blow this thing up? I don't want to do that because it's so perfect the way it is, but I do want to see other people take this model and run with it and do it in different areas. And all that's happening is there's one facilitator saying, making sure that the space is held, making sure that we have the room and all that. And, it's been recurring for long enough now that it's just kind of has its own momentum. But there's just one person that's like maybe checking in with a couple people. Hey, would you want to definitely be there? Maybe share something. And that's basically the essence of it. And then just saying to people, hey, this is a cool place, this is a safe space to come and talk about mushroom cultivation. And beyond that, like, I think that, what happens in that space is so much more than what you could ever ask for. I think that it's kind of helping to achieve a lot of different, or it's helping to solve a lot of different issues. One is obviously access. The others are kind of all around, how do we use psychedelics in a healthy way in our culture? And I think that the community model with cultivation at the center not only provides us a healthy way to access and to, like, have our own sense of preparation, but we have a community model of, like, preparing for experience. You have all these people to talk to about growing your mushrooms, people that have done it already, people that have a lot more experience than you. Then, you might even have some friends that want to, go on a journey with you at that point. I can't speak for what people are doing, but, and then when it comes to integration, you have a place to land, you have a group of people to come back to. And all this is around the culture of creating the medicine. And it's, it doesn't have to be something that you dedicate your whole life to. It's something you could show up to once a month, once every other month. But the education is free, the education is social. And what I've noticed is that there's a lot of people making new friends there too. So we're not just disseminating information. There's actually information being held through friendships, through lasting relationships, these stories are being, kind of continuously updated and maintained in a way that doesn't require a facilitator to do all the work. It's just kind of a natural process of people in connection. And in that way, I think that this model really speaks to the mycelial metaphor, we can call it. And Paul Stamets, he has a pretty funny way of referring to this metaphor as like the wood wide web. And that's how, it's referring to how the mushrooms, the mycelium in nature, underneath the soil, it connects all the plants and the trees. And it acts in a way that it actually brokers energy. It brokers all the different sugars and nutrition and hydration in a forest, because in a forest, if one tree gets sick and starts to die, it attracts the beings that will break it down and infect it. And that's not necessarily healthy for the rest of the forest. So the fungi underneath the soil will actually make sure that everything is in good transition. Everybody has what they need. And I think that communities like this, in kind of a horizontally organized way, can do something similar. When somebody has a need or somebody's like getting out of balance, we can check in with each other in a natural way, and really hopefully look out for each other in a way that's not super specific. It doesn't require a lot of personal time. People can really be themselves. And I think that, this is a good situation, in addition to there being integration circles and support groups and other things that we do provide with the Psychedelic Society. I just think that this is also another model that seems to be pretty functional, and it seems to be a good way to have community integration, preparation, and access all bundled into one. And people love it. Like, I love it. It's so inspiring. Like, it's so cool to go there and to see all sorts of different people coming to this space on their own healing journey, and to be growing, to see them from week to week, to see what they're doing, to hear about their successes or failures, and to discuss the process. And there's just a lot of really good vibes there. And what I want ultimately at the end of the day is more good vibes. So I'm going to just wrap this up. I really do want to keep it short, but quickly, I just want to speak to kind of like the deeper perspective, the deeper vision of, what I see as the future is just basically a ton of people growing mushrooms. I don't think that there needs to be a concept of scarcity. I don't think access needs to be an issue that we continue to have. I think that access can be something of the past, and I think that it will completely transform the conversation we're having around psychedelics once anybody could get them. If getting them is this huge obstacle, it kind of creates the pedestal effect. Oh, they're hard to get, like they must be really important, they must be. But we can kind of start to look at them as like less unattainable, less of a scarcity mindset, and less of a commodity. Once they're just kind of freely available, and everybody in their community knows somebody that grows mushrooms, or there's a mycelial mass in your neighborhood and you can go check it out. And in case you're wondering, like the name Mycelial Mass, it was formerly Mushroom Church. So there is like kind of that concept of congregation in there kind of built in, while mycelial mass is also just like a mushroom term to refer to the body of the mycelium, which is actually kind of like, in a metaphor, like almost like the tree to the fruit. Tree is the mycelium, the apple is the mushroom. That's just like a little bit more info. But yeah, I'm just imagining a future with tons of mushroom cultivators. I've been really working myself to refine the methods that I teach down to like the really most accessible, so that you can grow them in a shoebox without needing a pressure cooker or anything like that. And I'll be teaching a lot about this in the coming future around the Bay Area, and trying to just, make this education and make this movement more of a thing, because I think it is way beyond people being curious about psychedelics. I think it is about people looking for a way to heal their communities and heal their relationship to other people, to themselves, and to the earth. And I think that these models for cultivation and relationship with community can be a solution, can be one solution to those issues that ail us. So I just want to say thank you guys for listening. If I spoke too quickly, if you have any questions about anything, please put them in the side here. And I'm really happy to jump into Q&A. I see that there's one Q&A question on here. And Daniel, if you want to step in.
Well, I want to thank you for downloading that. I was wondering if mycelial mass had a religious connotation myself.
Yeah.
A little bit perhaps tongue in cheek, but also yet deeply meaningful. And I was going to ask, yeah, if you want to answer the first question is about kind of prohibition. What are the similarities and differences between the war on cannabis and the current status of psilocybin mushrooms? And how do you imagine home cultivation emerging as the movement moves forward?
Cool. So I'm going to speak as closely to that as I can, but also I just want to start off with the cannabis relationship being a really important part of my journey too. Oh wait, did it just disappear?
I made it go away, but you know what
Okay,
the
I just
question
want
is.
cool. Yeah, so in one of the reasons that my taboo was so strong was because I actually came from cannabis. I was a stoner for a while, and then ended up working in cannabis in California for a little bit. And what I just saw was a lot of, like, in my opinion, it was totally my opinion. I don't mean to apply it to anybody, but just a culture of abuse in a lot of cases. People really using way too much cannabis. Myself using way too much cannabis, not like taking a little hit here to, just to experience a different way of thinking or meditation, but just kind of an escapist mentality to, I'm going to smoke my troubles away. I'm just going to get high, fuck everything. And, that's not really, I thought that people might treat psychedelics the same way. They might treat mushrooms the same way. And I had already had some really powerful, deeply connecting experiences. So that's one of the reasons why I was like, there's a reason for this taboo, like it's maybe justified. But as I, heard all these stories, I met all these people that were like really profound, like really deep, caring people. And, I started to realize that that was just my opinion. And so when it comes to, so similarities and differences between the decades-long war on cannabis, what I think that the main difference here is that understanding of cannabis is kind of out there, that it's like, people are just getting high, whatever. I don't think that that's really what's going on for a lot of people, but that was part of the culture I was in. But I think that the way that mushrooms are emerging is really deeply as like a medicine. We have all this science coming out before the legalization, before decriminalization. And I think that what cannabis did was set us on a pathway of understanding how to deal with the gray area. There's been companies working in this gray area for over a decade now, maybe 2 decades. There's been lots of people dealing with this situation. And so not only do I think that we have the research to back up a really powerful healing movement, but also I see that like all the people from cannabis that have learned a lot of really powerful lessons can impart them on us. Hopefully we can learn from a lot of the mistakes that have been made in cannabis, where it was pretty much, at least in California, we can see that home cultivation or like cottage scale cultivation for, personal profit and growth is pretty much out of the question. It's all corporate, it's all big, big players. And, I'm not necessarily like totally sure how commodification should come to this marketplace. I'm not really sure that that's a big part of your question, but I do think that commodification isn't really that important of an issue if we're talking about how to bring cultivation into the home space for personal use and maybe, share with friends and whatnot. So as the movement moves forward, I just want to keep teaching a bunch of people. I want to help spread this movement. I've been talking to people in Colorado and Denver about mycelial mass recently, trying to inspire somebody to pick it up over there. So yeah, I think it just comes down to inspired people inspiring people.
That's gorgeous. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, it's a big difference between cannabis, which people can smoke a lot of, and it's very hard to grow and expensive to grow, versus mushrooms, which it's easy to grow more than you could ever want to eat.
That is exactly accurate. I mean, in that, like I used the shoebox as like a concept of scale, but in a shoebox, you can grow the microdose. You can grow your microdose regimen for the next year, in a month or two.
Right. So thank you. I have a question. Somebody is curious about books and websites which might be a good place for them to get started.
Cool. Yeah. I've done a ton of my research on the Shroomery. It's a good website. What you'll find out there is a lot of people saying things that aren't necessarily the best. people get really, people do something and it works, and then they're like super excited, and then they just tell everybody about it. So, shroomery is awesome, but kind of stick to like the posts that have a lot of, there's things called techs. It's like TEK. So it's like PF tech or monotub tech, all these different things. And just look around at those popular techs and see what works for you and what doesn't. Try not to get too bogged down in the comments. Just give it a try. And PF tech is a really good beginning. Let's see, I think this ties into the next question. Simplest method for pasteurizing substrates at home. So if you know anything about the process, it sounds like you do. I think that probably the easiest way to do it is to start off with PF Tech cakes and then break those up, and then use a coconut coir bucket tech pasteurization, and then mix your broken up cakes. I break them up inside of a Ziploc bag, and then I mix it with coconut coir that I just pasteurized with boiling water. And then I put that into a shoebox, unmodified monotub. I do that a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 parts coconut coir, 1 part PF Tech, and that's it. It's the simplest way that works. It can help you get a meaningful harvest, and that's what I teach people for their first method, like their first time. I teach that in depth.
Right on.
Doesn't require a pressure cooker.
So I'm getting a shout out to the shroomery and somebody there named Roger Rabbit. Do you have an opinion on the shroomery and Roger Rabbit?
I think the shroomery is amazing. I really like I said, like I was always a creeper on that forum. I never really like went deep. I just did it like research style. I was like, okay, cool. There's thousands and thousands of pages. Like, what am I gonna get into? And then when it comes to like Roger Rabbit and his techniques, like everything he does works. Like everything that he's taught works. And I think he's great. And that being said, like, he's teaching the methods that have created the platform for more refined methods. His stuff is like, from my experience, there's probably newer stuff that I don't know about. I'm not told. There's just so much info out there, but I've just tried to really refine the technique to what I just mentioned, and I think that that's the best way to get started. And then I have a couple different ideas about bulk and stuff. It's just trial and error, and you might not agree with me, but yeah, I really have spent a lot of time trying to refine it, and it seems to work pretty well for people. So Roger Rabbit, thank you, Roger Rabbit, really. Thank you, Shroomery. Thank you to all the moderators there. Thanks, Alan Rockefeller. So many good people putting in so much work.
Right on. Do you want to talk about how to start a myco community in an area that is still criminalized, aka everywhere?
AKA the world. Yeah. Okay. So, what I did, I started Mycelial mass before that. And to speak to it, I would basically say like a couple things. There's the one basic thing where if you're teaching about mycology in general, you can apply a lot of those same understandings to it, and you can get creative and figure out how to say what you need to say without attracting the wrong attention. And also, when we were doing Mycelial mass is held at Counterculture Labs, which is slightly advantageous because there's some lab gear to use there. You don't need it, and I wouldn't necessarily like suggest having it, but I think having it is cool. It makes it a little simpler. But when it comes to using a space that you don't want to put any risk on those places, just remember that like most mycelium, the white stuff, it looks the same. So if you're growing Ganoderma, or reishi, or you're growing some Psilocybe cubensis, people don't really know the difference between that. I mean, even as like a skilled mycologist, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you. I mean, sorry, as an expert in the field, I wouldn't necessarily know like what every different strain looks like from. I have general inklings, but they all look pretty similar, so it's kind of easier to keep it on the down low about that. And then I would say just build a network of people that want to know, that want to talk about it. And then also, if you have a psychedelic society in your area and you're really passionate about it, I would say also consider, being a part of decriminalization or bringing people together just over community and seeing what happens. I think that the biggest thing that I have to share is that I left for a year and came back, and it was awesome. Like, people just wanted to do it. It wasn't because I was like so passionate about it. It's because there's a community of passionate people. And that might be a Bay Area, that might be enhanced here in the Bay, but I know that people are passionate about mushrooms all over this country, and any city should have at least enough people to get something small going.
Right. And just to note that later on in the week on Sunday, Carlos and Larry, who are part of Decriminalize Nature Oakland, are going to be talking about how to decriminalize your neighborhood.
Hell yes.
So,
Everything's plugging in.
so you could just do that. You can just go and decriminalize your neighborhood. Tracy would like to know, what's your opinion on wild harvesting?
I think it's great. Go for it. If you, just know what you're looking for, and do your research. And there's really a bunch of awesome Facebook groups where you can take pictures of mushrooms growing if you feel unsure about what they are, and you can take a picture of it while it's in the substrate, whatever it's growing out of, and take a picture of it from the top down, from the bottom up. So if that's gills or if it's pores, you can capture all the important details, and you put that onto this Facebook group, mushroom identification Facebook group. There's like 10 or 15 of them with like 1 million people. And then you'll have some really excited mushroom cultivator like honing his skill, and he'll tell you what it is. You can also do the identification yourself, looking at different resources. There's a lot out there. But generally, if it's producing brown or brownish purplish spores, and it bruises blue, like if you break the cell walls, there's a blue bruising, that's pretty much always going to be a psychedelic mushroom that won't hurt you, besides giving you a pretty intense experience. But if you live in areas where like something like azarescence is growing, they can be like super potent. So just be really careful. The potency is a lot different with these different mushrooms, so just know what you have. Even if you're just like, oh, it's psilocybin containing, great, I'll be fine. It's still good to know what you have, so you can check in with the potency and dosing, things like that.
Can I tell you a little wild harvesting joke?
Yes.
I was talking to a guy, and he was saying, I walked out of Walmart and I looked down and I saw mushrooms, and I was like, oh my God, psychedelic mushrooms are growing where they built a Walmart. And then I said to myself, no, they built a Walmart where the mushrooms grow.
Bastards.
And I thought that
actually, Daniel, let me tell you. Okay, so it did land for me, but also like there's more to this story than you think. That the Walmart might actually be the ones cultivating the mushrooms, because it seems that like cyanescence and Elenii, at least in the Bay and probably a lot of areas, they grow best in irrigated wood chip beds, which is a completely unnatural habitat, and you can't find cyanescence or Elenii out in the woods. You just can't. They grow near banks and universities and parks and all these places that people inhabit, and Walmarts apparently. It's kind of an amazing phenomenon.
That's awesome.
It's too good to be true.
So
Yeah.
Julie Robillard has raised her hand. Should we let's have her chat?
Yeah, bring her.
All right,
bring
Julie,
her
let's see if we can get this to work. You might have to unmute yourself. Julie, can you get it?
Please, Julie. Bottom left corner, the mute stuff is there.
All right, we got about 3 more seconds, Julie, before we're gonna have to move on.
We really want it. Come on, Julie.
All right.
We tried.
I've been wondering about stacking functions with another space. Does anyone have ideas for places that are naturally nice and warm for our mycelial friends that could double duty as a place for growing in a cold climate? Is a real issue to keep spaces warm for weeks or months at a time.
So I guess that's referring to outdoor cultivation. Sounds like. Well, I think we did them. They just wanted to be heard, it sounds like. So.
Oh, indoors. She
Indoors.
says.
Well, I mean, usually, indoors, if you're comfortable inside, then so should the mushrooms. Like 70 to 80 degrees is like the window, the right space to be cultivating.
Okay, let's try. Carol has raised her hand. Let's see if we have better luck with Carol.
Okay, Carol. Wait. Yeah, Carol.
Hey, hi Seth.
Hey, Carol. Thanks for making it out here. Really glad to have you as a guest on our podcast.
This is so fabulous. I was just
What? We're waiting. Carol? You're muted.
Carol.
Okay, here we go. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought I was all alone.
Can I introduce you, Carol?
Okay, go ahead.
All right, guys, everybody. Carol was one of the people that when I walked into that moment of mycelial mass after a decrim, Carol was the one teaching PF Tech to all the people and super happy about it. And everybody was stoked. And it was just a beautiful moment. So thank you so much, Carol, for inspiring me. And thank you for being here right now.
Well, thank you. And I was growing mushrooms all by myself, and then I found mycelial mass, and it was just amazing. I found this community of people that I've just embraced and have embraced me, and it's fabulous. So it's been wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. It feels so now everybody knows it's true. I'm not just making things up.
Anyway.
In your experience, like, how has being a part of that community impacted your personal journey using when you're like using mushrooms?
It's just made me so grateful for the mushrooms, but also just the community of people. It's because it's brought it out into the open, so I don't feel alone with it. I don't have to hide it. I get to share it with friends, and I've made such good friends within this group. That's been fabulous. So good for me and my family, and it's just amazing. It's just changed my life. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Carol. I heard you're moving to Denver soon. Is that true?
Yeah, I'm going to be moving there next spring, and I'm going to be hopefully taking mycelial mass with me if there's not already one there. So I'll definitely be involved there for sure. So,
awesome. Well,
yeah.
That's great news. And if anybody here is living in Denver listening now, please jump on.
Yeah.
Or get in touch with each other.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'll let you go. I'll go so you can chat with some other folks. Okay.
All right.
Thanks,
a lot,
Carol.
Have a great day.
You too.
That's cool. Little reunion. That's nice.
Yeah.
So do you have an opinion on different psychedelic varieties?
Yeah, totally. Well, when it comes to, so we have like two different categories. Basically, almost everybody's consuming psilocybe cubensis. So anytime you hear a name like Thai or Golden Teacher or albinos or penis envy, all these different things, like, it's kind of, those are all cubensis strains of cubensis. Almost like in cannabis, it's all cannabis, but you have, sour diesel or chunky monkey or whatever. And then, but unlike in cannabis, you don't have like other plants that have THC in them, but in fungi, you have almost 200 species of psilocybin containing mushrooms. So the ones that we cultivate, there's only about like 10 species that really can be cultivated, but truly there's one species that's ubiquitously cultivated, that's psilocybe cubensis. So in that narrow realm of cubensis, I do think that there are differences, but I don't think they're super significant in the way that like you should have a ton of awareness about it and you should be like really concerned about what it is. I think there's as much story and narrative to it that's impacting the journey as it is like people's personal interaction with the mushroom and like the actual compounds in the mushroom. One thing that I will say with certainty is that penis envy is definitely a different animal, like a different mushroom. It's more strong. people are almost always having trips that are borderline edgy or aggressive or feel a little bit like they're pushing the boundaries. That seems like, it's my experience. It's also a lot of people's experience. Is that just a story that we're telling so it becomes true? Like maybe there is some element of that, but it's pretty ubiquitous, like pretty agreed upon that that's the main difference. And then things like, the golden teachers or something like, they're generally considered like a gentle mushroom, something that people are always more often having good experiences with. When it comes to actually different species of mushrooms, there are a lot of different species. And for example, like in Mexico, cubensis is referred to as San Isidro, which is like the saint of like the working man or the farmer. And they're generally considered like mushrooms for doing work. Like, and I'm not totally sure what that means in the context of their culture, but there's other mushrooms that are more used in a spiritual context or more for the spiritual context. There's things that are considered lighter, where mushroom like cubensis is considered heavier. And then there's things like azurescence, which is like going to basically put you into full paralysis. It's really high in like theocysteine apparently. And but the truth is that there's a lot that we don't know. As much as like I try to sound like I know, these are just the things I've heard, and my experiences have shown me that largely a cubensis mushroom is a cubensis mushroom, and that the more important factors are like when I'm doing it, where I'm doing it, how I'm feeling, am I hydrated, am I taking care of myself, am I setting myself up for a good ceremony with set and setting and community and different things. So I would consider all of those factors before considering what strain of cubensis that I'm using. Not to say it's not important, go ahead and do what feels really relevant to you.
I've got just a question from Bonnie, just to reiterate. He said that the golden teachers tend to be more gentle and that the penis envy tend to be more aggressive. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is what I said. And somebody else made this comment. They tend to be lower yielding crop though, trade-off stronger but less of it. And that's also accurate for penis envy.
Now, what is your opinion on dry versus wet consumption?
This is an interesting one. I've done some experiments with like wet versus dry. For me, like, okay, let me compare it to something that's maybe more understood for people, where it's like the difference between mushroom tea and eating mushrooms. Like for me, the tea is always lighter. It always feels like more energetic and exciting versus the eating the dried mushrooms can kind of feel heavier. It can feel a little bit more grounding. I kind of have that experience, that same differentiation between wet mushrooms versus dry mushrooms, where I have a little bit more of a enlivening experience with wet mushrooms. And I've also heard some information about how like the like wet mushrooms, you can actually like just chew them the whole time, almost like salvia leaves, and absorb the compounds through your cheeks. And in this way, like the psilocin, it doesn't get broken down into psilocybin. It was something like that, and that it'll like enter your whole bloodstream faster. I thought that was really interesting. That was the method used to contact Quetzalcoatl in like traditional culture, and the feathered serpent god. Yeah, so that was like, so you dip them in honey and chew them, and usually eat it with cacao. Yeah, pretty interesting stuff. There's so much to get into, but yeah, basically, I think that, yeah, like the wet mushrooms are a little bit more energetic. They're also 1/10, or they're 10 times the weight of dry mushrooms. So if you were going to eat like a dry gram, it would be 10 grams wet. So for people that are listening.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so many mycology experts in the comments, people just going off.
Yeah, it's good. It's good stuff. Do you want to comment on any of this that
I mean,
you're seeing over here?
I don't have much to say. It looks like good things are happening over there. Oh, somebody mentions the lemon tech. Yeah, so if I'm making a tea, I'll usually powder the mushrooms, soak them in lemon, and then brew the whole thing in a tea. The lemon, it's supposed to help degrade, like help process some of the work that your body would have to do later. And it's easier on your liver, and then it just goes into your bloodstream faster. I've tried it I've tried a lot of tea with and without the lemon tech, and it doesn't seem to make a huge difference, but I do really like the lemony flavor. I add ginger usually too, and it's nice for the stomach.
Ginger Tech.
Ginger Tech. Yeah, is that where you went to school, Ginger Tech?
Yes. The end of the year football game between Ginger Tech and Lemon Tech is always wild.
Oh, we have another Q&A. Do you have any experience with hardwood fuel pellets and cubes? No, I don't. I wouldn't grow them on that. They grow really well on just coconut coir, vermicula. You can do horse poo-poo and stuff too. There's a number of things, but just when it comes to the beginning cultivator, I always just teach coconut coir, 100% coconut coir, because it works. And people don't really have to go out of their way to try a bunch of stuff and potentially cover their house in horse dew and maybe make some odd smells that the neighbors are curious about and whatever. I mean, it's just clean and quick and easy, and you can buy it at the store. So I always recommend coir.
I think I heard somebody was just doing it in his coffee grounds.
Yeah, you can add coffee grounds to it as well. The thing that's cool about coconut coir, it's super low in nutrition, but it's like really, basically what mushrooms and fungi in general do really well is they break down complex carbohydrates, and like things like lignin and, trees like wood and stuff. They're like just really complex, long carbon chains. So like a sugar is like a super short carbon chain. It's really easy to digest. And like a piece of wood, lignin, it's like super difficult to. In fact, there's like nothing really besides fungi that breaks down wood. If we didn't have fungus, we'd be like, the wood would just be stacked up all around us probably. That being said, like I haven't heard of anybody growing shrooms with what is it, like hardwood fuel pellets, but I've grown oyster mushrooms and I've grown like other mushrooms with hardwood fuel pellets. So it's definitely normal in the space. But yeah, what I was saying about kind of the nutrition content being really low in coconut coir, it's that like coffee grounds, they can really contaminate a lot easier. So for people that are just getting started, adding that little bit of a higher nutrition thing, it can just like add a higher risk value to what you're doing. And then James, I saw mention that it's a pH issue as well. So
Hey,
you might need
James.
to buffer with something. Hey, James, Shroom Shop, what's up? SF, yeah, Hate Street Shroom Shop, shout out. Yeah, so any other questions, guys? Wow, we still got 73 people here. Thanks for following the journey with us.
Is Apache Junction, what is Apache Junction near? Somebody in Apache Junction is looking for a community.
Try Google Maps. Should we open it up in the side browser?
Phoenix. So it's interesting. I was talking to somebody recently who wishes there was a community in Phoenix. So I think Tucson might have some stuff going on, and maybe Sedona, but I feel like Phoenix is ripe for community.
Check out psychedelic.community. It's a website that has a map with all the psychedelic groups and stuff on it.
Perfect. Yeah. So
I
cool.
think it lists everything. I don't know if it has everything, but yeah.
So Seth, thank you so much for being here. Do you want to, if people want to get in touch or they want to be a part of any of your projects, how would they do that?
Cool. So I'm teaching, increasingly teaching around the Bay. You can follow me in what I'm doing. I'll be advertised through the SF Psychedelic Society. But I'm also creating my own a course. I'm doing an online course to bring like the most accessible methods to people, and including it in a trio, trying to add a little bit about integration, preparation. So it's more like a holistic resource for, not just how to grow the mushrooms, but then how to use them in best practices, but also keeping it simple. So I'm doing that under the banner Myco Rising. And I have a website you can check out and put yourself on our newsletter. It's called mycorisingfungi.com. So I'll spell that. It's mycorisingfungi.com. mycorisingfungi.com. And if you're a mushroom nerd, you probably already got the joke. But Myco Rising, it's like not only like rising, like mushroom rising. Myco refers to mycology, mushrooms rising, ascending. but mycorrhizal fungi themselves are also the fungi that connect the forest, that connect everything. So we're talking about rising, but through connection. And that's like the little bit of the nerdy, deeper story for you.
You're blowing my mind
yeah.
right now.
All right. Well, I want to say thanks a lot, Daniel. It's been really fun, man. I didn't, this went so great, and I'd do it again anytime. Thank you for doing this work to bring us all together and to connect us through the World Wide Web. It's a pretty interesting network of connection we have. Thank you to everybody for checking me out and what I'm talking about. Please help me start mycelial mass all over the world. Help yourself start it all over the world. Let's do good things and bring mushrooms to the people.
Mushrooms to the people. All right. Namaste. I will see you guys. Seth might be in the forum. We've got that forum, circle.timeintegration.com, where maybe he'll be around to answer questions this weekend about his talk. And we'll be back in 15 minutes with Robert Mitchell, who's going to talk about using astrology to prepare for psychedelic journeys.
Woo! All right, guys. Much love.
Much love.
Peace.
Namaste.